Two sample t-tests. This is chapter 24 in the book. Okay, so you take a random sample of 25 geometry students and determine their grades for the first semester. You're interested in finding out if boys or girls have higher grades on average. The grades are listed below. Are these data evidence, on average, that boys make higher grades in geometry than girls do? Okay, so we have two samples, one of boys and one of girls. So we're interested in two parameters, mu1, which is the mean geometry grade for boys, and then mu2, which is the mean geometry grade for girls. Our null hypothesis is that they're equal, and our alternative hypothesis is it evidence that boys make higher grades than girls do. So our alternative hypothesis is that the boys' average is higher than the girls' average. Okay, so now we have to check our conditions. One, it needs to be random, so there needs to be a simple random sample, which is stated. Then we have our 10% condition. You have to check it for both. So there's 15 boys. 15 is less than 10% of all boys in geometry. And 10 girls, which is less than 10% of all girls in geometry. 3, the groups need to be independent. Well, boys and girls are independent groups. And the fourth one is that the populations need to be nearly normal. So to check that, the easiest way is to do your normal probability plot. So you get your calculator, and in list 1 you put in the boys' scores, and in list 2 you put in the girls' scores. Then you go to stat plot, so second y equals, stat plot 1, turn it on, go all the way over to the right, to the bottom right hand one for the normal probability plot. For boys we want L1. And then if you need to zoom, hit zoom 9 for zoom stat. Then you have to sketch it. So for boys, here's our score. Here's our z-score. And then for girls, so you just go second y equals, and then you just change it to list 2. And then you probably don't have to zoom again, but if you want to. So then you sketch it for girls. So there's their score for geometry. And you just sketch the graph. So both normal probability plots are fairly linear, which is what we're after. Okay, so now we state that we're going to do a two-sample t-test. So in your calculator, you go stat, tests, two-samp t-test. Please write out the whole word. L1, L2, our alternative hypothesis is greater than. Always say no for pooling. Calculate and write down what you see. So t equals 0.8208. The p-value is 0.2105. We have 20.46 degrees of freedom. X bar 1 is 81, so that's our boys' average of our sample. Our girls' average for our sample is 77.9. Sample standard deviations of 9.66 and 8.96. And then we had 15 boys and 10 girls. So here, since you're using 1 and 2 here, make sure they match up to the 1 and 2 here. If you use like B and G for boys and girls, make sure you use B and G for boys and girls over here as well. Okay, so our p-value is 0.21. If our alpha is 0.05, which we usually default to, well, that's bigger than 0.05. So that means that we fail to reject the null hypothesis. So, are these data evidence that on average boys make higher grades in geometry than girls do? Well, we've failed to reject, or we've accepted, but we don't ever actually say that, our null hypothesis. So we think this is true. We think that the mean is the same for both genders. So we don't think that boys make higher grades than girls. So no, this is not evidence that on average boys make higher grades in geometry than girls do. So with such a high p-value, because it's greater than 0.05, I fail to reject the null hypothesis that the true mean geometry grade are the same for boys and girls. Okay, so then to do the confidence interval, you go in your calculator, stat tests to samp t interval, L1, L2, 99, just say no to pooling, calculate. So there it is, and we've already written this stuff down from our test, so we don't have to write it down again. So we want to do a 2-sample t interval, and we're doing mu1 minus mu2. The interval is negative 7.62 to positive 13.82. So like I said, we've already written down the degrees of freedom and the x-bars from the test, so we don't have to write it down again. So you say, I am 99% confident that the difference in the true mean geometry grades for boys and girls is between negative 7.62 points and 13.82 points. So this basically means that we're 99% confident that on average boys have a grade that's between 7.62 points below and 13.82 points above the mean grade for girls.